So here we have this question. Do we need to use variables or equations? So you can use whatever you want to solve this, okay? It's you can use also your creative approach, right? Some people solve things numerically. They try values. Some other people love algebra. They try to represent everything they read as a word problem in terms of math connections and relationships, whatever works best for you. Okay? So sometimes it's useful to have some, like a tool, to represent what a problem tells us, right? Yeah, we'll see a lesson in which we'll discuss word problems in particular. That is, those problems, math problems with a lot of text, and how to translate those into valid math or logical relationships, right? For example, equations or inequalities or formulas that we can use to solve the unknown. Um, in this case, something interesting is that we may think of an easy manner of representing three consecutive integers, right? So, for example, if one integer we call it n, the next integer would be, well, n added with 1. For example, 13 and 14, that would be consecutive integers. And if we have another one that is consecutive to these previous two, obviously I would have to add 1 to this one. So n plus 1 would be simply n plus 2. So here I have a simple manner of representing three consecutive integers. And their sum, probably I could do this. I could sum these three expressions. I don't need to use a parentheses because actually they are all expressions with sums only. So in this addition, it doesn't matter how I group the terms because it will be the same value, right? This is the sum of three consecutive integers, and since it's less than 75, I could use, for example, this inequality symbol, right? Less than, to represent the relationship of the sum with 75. And then here, I could use this, to find a range for the value of n. But n is what? Is the smallest one, right? So um, think about it. If I group the three letters n, let's say n is a variable because so far I don't know the value of n, so I could have 3 times n. While if I group together these constant values, obviously I will have the sum of 1 and 2, 3. And from here, what to do? Well, it's very useful to know some algebra, right? How do you simplify an inequality? Well, here you could use the same rules as in equations, right? You can subtract 3 on both sides so that you get 72. And then you can divide everything by 3 in order to get a range of values for n alone. So divide by 3 on both sides, I will get n is less than 24. So now I have a range of values, a range of values for n, which in this case, since it is the first of my three consecutive integers, it's actually the smallest one, right? N plus 1 and n plus 2 are greater than n. And the question is, what's the greatest possible value of the smallest one? So if n is supposed to be an integer, then this inequality is the same as saying, right? Notice that since it says integers, so integers can be positive or negative integers. So obviously, n could be any possible number. Let's say n belongs to this. For example, here, we could have, for example, negative 10, here, negative 1. Yeah, n could be a negative integer, right? It could be 0, and then 1, 2, and so on. And then we could have 21, 22, and up to 23. Because n being an integer, and being 23 would still be less than 24. But 24 could be a valid value for n? No, because 24 is not less than 24. So here is the set of possible values of n. It could be any negative number. It could be 0. It could be 1, 2, 3, etc. up to 23. All of these integers are less than 24. So the question is, what's the greatest possible value? Clearly is this one. The top one, right, would be 23. And so this is the correct answer in this case. Okay, so how do we deal with these questions involving arithmetic? Well, algebra is a useful tool. Here is not very difficult to translate what the problem tells us in terms of a simple inequality such as this one. Does anyone have another approach that could be interesting? Another way to approach this? Otherwise, I can give you one. Okay? Let's think about more numerically instead of algebraically. Let's say, for example, that I realize that if I have 3 consecutive integers, right, I know that 75 is a number such that 75 is the same as 25 plus 25 plus 25. So it doesn't take too much elaboration to think of what numbers could I vary here in this sum to have instead a consecutive integer sum. Let's say, for example, okay, if I decrease this by 1 and increase this by 1, I would have 24, 25, and 26. And this sum would still be 75. But then I realize that I need 3 numbers that have a sum less than 75. So I start thinking, okay, if we want a sum less than 75, I couldn't have these 3 numbers. We would have to decrease them. But to decrease one of them means decreasing the other 2 because they have to be consecutive. So what if I decrease all of them by 1 unit? And then I have 25, 24, and 23. It couldn't be otherwise, right? I couldn't just decrease 26 and leave the other 25 alone. That is to say, I would have 24 plus 25 plus 25. Those wouldn't be consecutive anymore. So if I do this, after having a sum of 75, now that I have decreased the 3 terms of this sum by 1, I have a sum that is less than 75. And I realized that I couldn't decrease the 3 original terms of my sum by less than 1. I have to take at least 1 to each of them. And notice what happens. By taking only 1 to each of my terms, I know that there couldn't be greater numbers than these 3 that, being consecutive integers, would give me a sum that is less than 75. The result of this sum is the closest that I can get to 75. It couldn't be any other way. So, since I know that this is my possible greatest sum that is less than 75, just from intuition, then the question is, what is the greatest possible value of the smallest one? It has to be this. The answer is 23. So that is a totally arithmetic approach. Okay? Now, solving arithmetic questions in a totally arithmetic manner is not so easy at the beginning. You have to think a lot. You have to be very intuitive. That is why algebra is a very handy tool, because it eliminates the necessity for a lot of abstraction. Instead, you can deal with concrete objects that you can manipulate and solve, exactly as we did in the red annotations. Okay, so here you have 2 approaches, right? The idea is that you start finding your way into the arithmetic approach more and more as you progress and become more skillfully with this type of questions. But at the beginning, algebra is an essential tool.